Welcome back to our very first episode in this full-length course using SketchUp Pro 2023. We are in the welcome screen, which is what you first see when you bring up SketchUp. You have a lot of templates up here at the very top. You have even more templates back here. It's not a really big deal. The main thing that you want to look at is whether it's in inches or meters or millimeters and centimeters. For us, we're going to stick with inches. Other than that, everything that you see in there is modifiable inside of SketchUp. So it's not a really big deal whether you get it right here at the very beginning. Another thing is down here, it'll always show up your recent files, any kind of projects that you've recently opened, etc. And you can open up files or SketchUp files that you have that you've downloaded on your computer from outside resources. If you ever need to look up any kind of learning, they do have a few options here under the Learning tab. For us, we're going to select the Simple Inches template. Select that, and that will bring up your SketchUp. Now, for the overall layout, over here on the right, you have your default tray. That is modified by coming up here under your Windows tab and selecting Default Tray. You can also create new trays and stuff. For us, the main thing we want to make sure is that you have the outliner panel selected. I think by default it's turned off. You can leave on or turn off the instructor panel. That's completely up to you. Next is all of your toolbars. Now your toolbars are selected by going under View and selecting Toolbars. You have your Option tab, which allows you to make the icon smaller or larger. You also have where you can show the tips on the toolbars. I'll leave both those checked. Over here under your toolbars, normally this is what you will see with the getting started, especially if you first open up SketchUp. So we're going to turn that off and select the large tool set. I find the large tool set is better as it brings us and allows us to have a lot more of the option tools that we're going to use all the time without having to have a bunch of other toolbars open. I also like to select the selection, the styles, and the views toolbars, and those are up here at the very top. You can come in here and move them around by selecting those little dots. That brings up the little move tool, and we can kind of move those around and set those to where they're in a line and they kind of take up as small space as possible. The last thing I want to talk about before we kind of get into is a keyboard shortcuts that you're going to use all the time through SketchUp, and that is your mouse shortcuts. So over here in our toolbar, we have our orbit and we have our pan. Okay. However, if you press down on the middle scroll wheel on your mouse, you have the orbit tool automatically. And if you hold down that middle scroll wheel and hold down Shift, it automatically turns into the pan tool. And so this is really, really important that you utilize, as in some cases, especially with whenever we're using the Follow Me tool, you actually cannot select a tool in between using that tool. So utilizing those keyboard shortcuts will really speed up your process with this. So first thing, I'm going to kind of move this person out of the way. I'm going to leave it up there, especially for a reference of how sizes are. One of the big things whenever people that are first getting into SketchUp is if we zoom out, without that person, there's no telling how big something is here in SketchUp. Everything looks really the same. Another thing that you want to be aware of is that by default, down here is your measurement box, and so anytime we press measurements, that's where it's going to be. It's not a text box where we have to click. It's just automatically anything we type in is going to be there, and it's also going to show us our measurements. So for example, I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and I'm simply going to create a very large rectangle. Whenever we created that rectangle, you'll see down here in the very bottom right now mine's at 303 feet, 10.5 inches by 168 feet, 10 1/8 inches. If I wanted a specific measurement, for example, if I wanted it to be 100 foot by 100 foot, I could type in 100 foot, comma, 100 apostrophe, hit enter, and there is my 100 foot rectangle or square. The main thing is that the default measurement in SketchUp is inches. So if I just type in 100 by 100, so 100 comma 100, it's going to be in inches, not feet. So if I do want it to be feet, I do need to put in that apostrophe. So with our current project, we are going to build a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And we also have the plot. So in this episode, we're going to quickly put in the plot. So once we have our land, we're going to take our tape measure. You can select the T key in order to bring up your tape measure. And we're simply going to go and just put in a left measurement from here. From that left measurement going to the right, we're going to type in 72 apostrophe, 72 feet. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to create our front, and we're going to go from that front to the back, and we're going to type in 95 feet. If you type in different things down here at the very bottom right and it's not what you want, you can just press backspace and that will delete it. Make sure it looks how you want it to look, and then press enter. So now that we have our guides, again, these are just guides. We need to go over them with either the rectangle tool or the line tool, either one. The line tool works exactly the same way. Go through here, click on all 4, and now we have our rectangle. So for me, I'm going to actually delete all of my other guides and my land, as I only want to focus in on my rectangle here. Next, let's go ahead and put in the openings for both the garage and the house. So again, let's take our tape measure. The house sits over here 5 feet from the edge, so we'll create that guide. The front of the house sits 20 feet from the front and 43 feet from the back. On the right side, it's 23 feet. And so let's go ahead and take our rectangle tool, select that, and I'm just going to delete it. We're going to delete it because we're going to turn in our plot and we're going to turn it into a group, and then we're going to create our foundation in later episodes. Here, I'm going to go ahead and delete those guides so that I don't have to worry about them. Over here, let's go ahead and do 5 feet. This is for the garage. It is 6 feet from the back. And overall, the garage is 20 feet by 20 feet. So we're going to type in 20 feet and go from the back forward for another 20 feet. Let's go ahead and create that. Select it, and I'm just going to hit delete. This way, both of our foundations are completely separate. We do have some sidewalks. So I'm going to create a guide about a foot in from the right of our garage. I'm going to go 8 feet over, and this is going to be the driveway. It does kind of loop or curve here at the top, so I'm going to select another 1 foot over here. At this point, we need to create an arc that curves our driveway from here to about right here. Okay, it's going to curve in and then curve out. So here I'm just going to select my 2-point arc. I'm going to kind of select it here. We're just going to kind of eyeball it. And then from this point, let's go ahead and finish that up. Make it a tangent. And we actually don't want that. Let's try to redo that. If you ever delete something by mistake, just hold down Control and hit Z. You can also come in here to Edit, Undo. So let's try to get that again, and let's try to make sure it ends. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect, but now with this, let's go ahead and finish up our driveway on both sides here. I do want to make sure that we got there. And we're simply going to pull this up 3 inches. This sealed back in, so let's go ahead and delete that. Delete those. We do have a little sidewalk. Let's go ahead and go about 5 feet down. The sidewalk itself is 3 feet. And without looking forward, I'm not sure exactly where the center of the door is, but let's go ahead and bring that up, that 3 feet. The front door is 26 feet from this left side. So let's go ahead and type in 26 feet. That's the center of my door. So let's just go ahead and do kind of 4 feet on each side for a nice little front porch. Let's go 4 feet there. Let's create our rectangle. Let's bring this up 6 inches for now. And from the center point, let's go over 1'6". Again, your inches is the default, so we don't have to do anything after the 6. But here, we can just create this rectangle. And pull that up. Again, use your mouse keyboard shortcuts. Press down on the middle scroll wheel is orbit. Holding down that and shift pans around. That allows you to really move around. I do have this overhang here, so we're going to select our push pull tool, and we're going to push that in, hover over that back edge, and push it flush. We do have the sidewalk goals continues going down. So what we can do is simply over here on this sidewalk, take our line tool, draw it straight up. You'll notice that it's blue. That means it is parallel to the blue axis, which is going up and down. You don't want it to ever be just straight black line, because that means it's not going along any kind of axis. So that's what we want. Go ahead and now if we select this, it should be different than everything else. Select your push pull tool, and we can pull this out all the way out to the front. We don't need these lines, so we can come in here and we can erase any kind of lines, and we can erase our guides that we don't really need anymore. I'm going to leave this to keep this separate, as this is probably going to be concrete and this could be concrete or asphalt, so we'll leave it separate. From here, we do have a few things that we could put in there, but we're going to save it until we get to the end of our project and we're starting to do some landscaping. So we do have some trees and bushes. We also have a back porch, but we'll build that out at the end. At this point, let's go ahead and select our push-pull tool, and I'm simply going to bring this down just a little bit. Again, select that. Hover over what we've already brought down. It's not a big deal on how much it needs to be brought down. For our sidewalks and everything, I want to hit Control. So hit Control once, that's going to toggle a new starting face. And I'm just going to bring that down to kind of fill in that space. Same thing over here with all of these. That's just going to fill in all of those gaps. If yours comes up like this right here, easy fix with that. Make sure that control is selected. It makes that little plus sign, and we can just come in here and do that right there. In SketchUp, if you ever see this kind of bluish gray, that simply means that that's the back side of the face. Okay, for SketchUp purposes, it's not a huge deal. For us, we do want to make sure that that is taken care of by right-clicking on it and reverse faces. The reason is because if this face, which this kind of probably will be, is ever visible in places like Unreal Engine, or Unity, then that will not show up. So we just want to make sure that all of this, and kind of in the future, that's all kind of taken care of and the face is correct. So at this point, I want to hit the space bar in order to bring up your selection tool, which is again this one right here. I want to triple click to make sure that everything is selected. We'll right click and go to make group. Over here under your outliner panel, we have our group. I want to right click, go to rename, and this is going to be our plot. So at this point, this is the finishing point of our plot. In our next episode, we'll kind of get really right into creating our foundation in this new SketchUp 2023 course.